All right, we're going to go ahead and get started here. Can everybody see my screen? For the most part, I think everybody is muted, so I do have the chat window open. If you guys can hear me and see the screen, great. Thank you, Whitney. Okay, so a closing disclosure. This is the final disclosure to the borrower that they're going to get, kind of estimating their closing costs. It's not the final, as there's several stages to it, okay? Most of us here are in what we consider a dry funding state. So in a dry funding state, you're always going to get what's called a post-consummation CD. Prior to these, there was a HUD-1. So all the borrowers used to get a final HUD-1, basically showing their final fees on the transaction, okay? That doesn't get issued until after escrow disperses all the funds, because what happens is we as the lender will send them out a post-consummation CD showing them the final fees, but before then there's several stages, as I mentioned. So the initial CD has to be sent out to the borrower 3 days before the consummation of the loan documents, okay? So that's going to be an estimated closing disclosure. All the fees there on a dry state is still going to be an estimate. Same thing with a wet state, because the fees are not yet finalized. What happens with us is when we send out the initial CD, we will also send a copy to your settlement agent. The settlement agent then will begin the balancing process for us, so that way we have a much more accurate CD at the time of consummation, closing, right, when the borrower signs the closing docs. So I just want to go over this in case your borrowers ever have questions on what this disclosure means, so you guys can go over it with them. It really explains the details of the transaction, okay? It'll give you the date in which it was issued. As this one I pulled, it was a post-consummation CD. You'll see that it was shown on November 13th when it was issued. The closing date was when the loan closed and basically funded, because it shows the disbursement date of 10/30 as well, okay? So the disbursement date is the date in which the funds were dispersed out on the transaction, okay? We, the lender, will send the wire for the transaction, and that date is the date in which the loan will be dispersed, okay? Hopefully, if they did a same-day recording. LA County, as a lot of you guys know, is a very special entity. There is, in very few cases, allowing a same-day recording. So in LA County, you will mostly notice that this disbursement date is technically 1 day after funding, because we're collecting per diem interest from the date in which the loan proceeds were dispersed, okay? If this was a wet state wet state purchases, everything happens same day. When the borrower signed those loan documents, we, the lender, will also have our funds at the table, so that way they can disperse those loans once we give them the okay to do so. Not many of you guys will be doing wet states, as most of you guys are focused here in California, but some people are originating loans in other states such as Texas, Virginia, Florida. Those are primarily our wet states that we do business in, okay? But in the state of California, typically the borrowers will sign loan documents, return it back to us, we will review it and fund the loan. So if they have any questions, the CD will break it down for them. It gives them the columns and the amounts, right? So here, as you can see, this section here is the loan terms. Your loan amount on this loan was $427,500. The interest rate is 7.75%. Your monthly principal and interest breaks down to $3,062.66. Okay, all this information does come from Encompass and how we're generating them. How the projected payments works, okay? This breaks it down and lets us know. Well, hey, you have your principal and interest of $3,062.66. There is mortgage insurance on this for $260.06. Okay, your estimated escrows, which is your property taxes and insurance, in the payment is $513.75. So the payment to the lender for the first 13 years, and I'm going to explain to you why it's only for 13 years, is $3,836.47. The reason why this loan carries this payment for 13 years is because the MI drops off on a conventional loan at 70% loan to value. Okay, so once the principal balance hits that 78%, it will drop off. At the end of this training on the CD, I'm going to let you guys see each set of loan documents comes out with an amortization table, and the borrowers can review it, and you guys can go over that with them and show them when it will drop off. So years 14, as you can 14 through 30 for the remaining of the life, as you can see, the mortgage insurance is no longer there. So their payment has dropped down to $3,576.41. Now, some of you might be doing the math already and asking, why is this section here, where it's the estimated taxes, insurance, and assessments, show a higher amount? I believe is either in a condominium or a PUD, and there's HOAs. So if I add your estimated impounds, which is always your property taxes, homeowners insurance, and mortgage insurance, it totals $773.81. But you see that this box right here is marked other and states there is HOA. As you guys know, when there's HOA, we don't collect that payment. The borrower is responsible for making that payment directly to the HOA, right? So every single month, if I take $811.75 minus $773.81, this borrower is making a payment to the HOA of $37.94. So you'll see some transactions where there's no HOA that this box is not marked. But as you can see, in this transaction, it is marked, but it's telling them, is it escrowed? It says no. But we want to tell them, hey, by owning this property, there is still other payments that you guys are making, but it's not all necessarily to us. Okay, this will only include where it says yes, be included in the payment made to us. Here it gives you a total sum of the closing costs of the loan. In total on this loan, closing costs, which includes escrows, lender fees, impounds, all of that, of $17,629.69. Since this was a post-consummation CD, this borrower at the end of the transaction got a refund after the deposit of $1,409.64. So before I go on to the next page of the CD, does anybody have any questions about this page so far? So there is additional information. If your borrower ever gets lost, you can point it out to them. What the type of transaction was, what type of product, was it a fixed, an ARM, right? The loan terms, how long it was taken out for, 30 years, and our loan number. So all of this contains information that the borrowers will find useful. If they need to reach out to escrow, it will contain escrow's name and their escrow number, including the sales price. Okay. So on page 2, this is where things get a little more complicated. Okay. This is how the fees are broken down. Loan costs. This is basically costs that are being associated with the loan. Box A is for origination. That is basically fees that come directly to us, the lender. As you can see here, it had loan discount points of 0.875, our administration fee, our loan origination fee, and our underwriting fee. Okay, it gives you the total of this box in gray and bolded up here. But it will itemize those fees down in which was charged to total that amount. Shadow asked, just 1 point of origination. Yes, they only charge 1 point of origination. All right. So then I'm going to go ahead and continue on from this section here. Okay. The next section is what they call box B. Box B is services that the borrowers did not shop for. For instance, the appraisal company, right? The borrower cannot shop for the appraisal company, as we have to use AMC's those have to be used, so they cannot shop for the appraisal. They could not shop for the credit report, our flood cert, or our HOA handling fee. And the reason why they can't do that is those are already set services. But I do want to break down these columns for you. You see this section right here where it says borrower paid. There's two sides to this borrower paid section. There's an at closing and before closing. Okay, so some of you guys will know the lingos that we use, POC, which stands for paid outside of closing. Okay, that just means that the borrower's paid before the loan closed. So as you can see, the appraisal fee here, paid to property rate, is in the POC column. It being in the POC column just means that the borrower's paid for it and it does not get added to the cash to close for the transaction at the time of closing because they've already paid for it before. The credit report fee on this one looks like we were collecting it. I believe the loan officer might have paid for it up front and wanted to get reimbursed. And then the flood cert fee, okay, was not paid for outside of closing. So those two fees will be charged at the time of closing. The HOA certification handling fee, basically our HOA docs, those show that it is POC. So remember that our team will always ask you guys for invoices, right? The processors know that when submitting the loan over to a CD request, they are providing us all of the invoices on this transaction that we would need to collect on, including fees in this box that have been POC. So the appraisal invoice will be included in there. The credit report invoice will be included in there. The flood cert is a standard service that we pay a monthly bill. So there is no invoice for this, but it is charged on every single loan. As a life of the loan, flood cert needs to be pulled on every single loan to make sure that it's not in a flood zone. The HOA certification looks like it was provided to us showing that it was already paid and the total was $300. So as you can tell, again, it sums up even the POC amounts up here to show the borrowers the final total closing costs charged in box B. Box C is services the borrowers did shop for. Because what we do as a lender, we will disclose to the borrower our preferred service provider. It can be Tycor, it can be Fidelity, it can be First American, and they will give us fees to provide to the borrower. And usually your initial disclosures will have those fees. It tells the borrower, hey, if you go with this service provider, these are direct closing costs. Unfortunately, the honest truth is we know on purchase transactions, the borrowers really do not have the choice on title and escrow. It is typically selected by the seller. But this now you'll see is the first column that will show you the seller paid fees. So this way it is disclosed to the borrower that the seller is paying fees as well. The one thing that we typically don't want to show is if the seller has any private payoffs or anything like that, and that's going to be on another page. But the borrowers need to know that, hey, I'm not the only one paying closing costs. The seller is as well. But as you can see, these fees, nothing is showing in the POC column. The seller column also functions the same way. There is a paid at closing and a paid before closing. Very few fees you will see paid by the seller before closing. The one of the fees that you can see shown this way is the property taxes, okay? Most of you guys know already here in the state of California, the property taxes are already due. So there's a chance that if the seller already paid those taxes, you will see further down property taxes paid by the seller in the POC column. But we're not at that column yet, okay? So this right here is typically all title and escrow fees charged on the transaction. As you can see, it shows archive fee, attorney review fee, a courier fee, a document preparation fee, a title endorsement fee, escrow fee. Okay, I'm not going to list all of them, but as you can see, it also tells you who it's being paid to. Same thing with box B. As you can see, appraisal fee shows paid to Property Rate LLC. Flood certification is being paid to MFI Credit Solutions. The credit report was being paid to Icor Lending because Icor Lending is collecting that fee on behalf of the loan officer for reimbursement. The HOA fee was showing paid to Bristol Place as it was POC. But as you can tell, there's all of these fees here. It will sum up the total here. They do not provide a sum total for the seller, as you can see, but only for the buyer. Because we, the lender, are only required to be responsible for borrower paid fees. We do just have to disclose to the buyer the seller closing costs, okay? So that's why it's very important when you guys are asking for fee sheets up front, if you guys can ask for fee sheets that include seller paid fees for the transaction. Going down, other costs. So this is other costs associated with the loan, such as recording fees, prepaid interest, our impounds, property taxes that might be paid, homeowners insurance that might be paid, but they're all broken down into other boxes. Box E is for your taxes and other government fees. What they mean by other government fees is your recording fees. So you'll see here under the recording fees, it's broken down for your deed and for your mortgage. The deed will typically be for your deed of trust. Mortgage would be for if there was a grant charge for the grant deed or an interspousal transfer deed or something like that. So it was broken down as $70 for the deed of trust. And this one might have been a special recording of some sort that added $13 on top of it, right? So the total came out to the recording fees of $83 that the borrower paid for. Transfer taxes here are being paid to Orange County, showed being paid by the seller. So sometimes you'll see on purchase contracts, you'll see that the transfer taxes might be split between buyer and seller, but customarily you will see it in the state of California paid by the seller. Prepaids. Basically, these are things that you're prepaying up front, okay? So this means your homeowner's insurance. As you can see, homeowner's insurance here is a 12-month collection totaling $540 being paid to Irma Renee Garcia Agency, okay? There's no upfront mortgage insurance premium. So this line here, if you were seeing a VA loan and there is a guarantee fee or an FHA loan that has an upfront, which will have the upfront, that amount will be shown here, okay? Typically, it can be financed, but special, very rare occasions, somehow we might have seller credits, or for some reason the borrower decides they don't want to finance it. They can pay it through their own funds, but that amount will still be shown as due here. Prepaid interest. This here tells the borrower how much per day they are paying in per diem from what date to what date. So from October 30th to November 1st, that's 2 days, they paid a total of $184.06 in per diem interest. But we previously mentioned about property taxes, right? So here, property taxes is being shown paid to Orange County in the amount of $1,753.18 paid by the seller. So typically when that's going to be paid by the seller on a purchase transaction, there's going to be something called prorations. And I'll get to that section in a little bit and I'll explain to you what the prorations are. Okay, that is box F for prepaids. Box G is your setup for your escrow account. So in a previous training, I showed you guys how to do set up the impounds in Compass. So this is here where you're going to visually see how that comes out. On an LE, this might be set up. The only difference is the LE will not show these credits, so it will not show an aggregate adjustment. But on the CD, as you can see here, homeowners insurance of $45 is being collected for 3 months, totaling $135. Then property taxes for 4 months at $468.75, totaling $18.75. The aggregate adjustment is to offset any cushion that is unnecessary, okay? Don't ask me exactly how it's calculated. It's a very long formula, but this right here is to offset the cushion, because if you add this $18.75 plus $13.50, it does not total $17.85. So the system is stating that there's $225 too much in the escrow account. That's why there's an aggregate adjustment credit to offset that, to start the balance of their escrow account at $1,785. where you'll see most of the seller fees is going to be box H. This is the other column. When I say the other column, it is other third-party fees that are being charged, as you can see here, like the HOA documentation fee, HOA dues, right? So a lot of these fees are typically paid by the seller. And as you can see, most of those fees are shown here in the seller column. In this special, very rare case, it looks like the borrowers agreed to pay a transaction coordinator fee. So there is a transaction coordinator fee being shown charged to the borrower for $450. Okay. But as you can see, the real estate commissions are broken down here for the realtors on how the seller is paying them. So Keystone Team here got $13,500. Circle Real Estate got $9,000, right? But as you can see, there's also repairs that needed to be done. And the owner's title insurance, which is optional, the seller is paying for to make sure that the title for the seller is going to be cleared. So as you can see, the total closing costs here in box J matches the total closing costs here on page 1. But the difference that you'll see is this section here where it is due at closing is at $16,729.69. The borrowers paid $900 in fees outside of closing, right? So this $16,729.69 is what's going to be added to their closing cost calculations, right, as the total here. But the POC amount is there to offset everything, right? So it's still listing the total closing cost, but this $16,729.69 is what's being added here to show that, hey, this is how much you still have to come in on top of your purchase price, right? So page 3 here, there is a estimate to show the borrowers between the loan estimate, how we disclosed to the borrower, to the CD and on what was finally charged. Okay, so as you can see, there's a column here that says loan estimate. So the total closing cost on the loan estimate here originally was disclosed to the borrower on the last one, and this goes based off of the very last LE, which typically is going to be your locked LE. At that time, it showed that there's a closing cost estimate of $19,196. Your final closing costs came out to be $17,629.69. This column here tells them, did this change between your LE and your final? Yes. Right? Closing costs paid before closing. The LE does not reflect anything POC ever. So here on the final, you have $900 showing POC. So did that change? Yes. Closing costs financed. There was nothing disclosed on the LE because there was no upfront MIP. Right? So as you can see here, it shows 0 as well. And did it change? It states no. The borrower's down payment on the LE showed $22,500. Our CD showed $22,500. Did that change? It did not. A deposit of $5,000. That was the funds that were required. The deposit of $5,000 was not shown on the initial LE. Maybe we did not have a copy of the LE at the time of disclosures, but on the final here, it did show $5,000. Yes, you increase this payment, see deposit in section L. So it's showing here, it's telling you to go here to section L to see that you have a $5,000 deposit. Seller credits did not change. Funds for borrower did not change, right? Other adjustments and credits. The other adjustments and credits is basically this section here, right? So why this amount here is showing 28,000 is because there's additional charges. And right here under section K, where it says, please see attached page for additional info, it looks like there might have been accounts to be paid off to help the borrower qualify, okay? So between these additional charges and this deposit, it offsets each other. But here, remember that the seller paid for the property taxes here, and I mentioned prorations. So the seller is charging prorations because, hey, I'm paying the property taxes, but a portion of this time, you're living in that property. So it's stating, hey, the borrower is taking ownership of that property since October 16th, to January 1st, which is the tax period, I'm charging you $577.67, and the seller over here is getting that credit. Okay, so you see right here, due to seller at closing, the purchase price was $450 plus this credit. The seller was due $450,577.67. So this right here is basically the amount due. So this is seller credits, right? So a lot of times, I haven't seen it that much recently, but sellers used to charge a per diem for late closings, right? So those you'll see here that the borrower would be paying for a per diem for a late closing, and the credit be credited over here. Okay. This section down here. So think of it this way: the top section K and M is debits, so things due by the borrower, and this is credits to the seller. Okay. Down here is credits to the buyer, things due from the seller. So that's why you see here the seller credit in this section here, $7,500 being credited to the buyer, but it's being debited from the seller here. Okay, so down here, section L for the borrower will list the deposits, the loan amounts. So these are all things that are being applied as a credit to the borrower. A seller credit of $7,500, and the borrower's brought in $30,000 as funds to close. Okay, so between this $468,590.36 of total dues minus total credits of $470,000, the borrower's got a refund of $1,409.64. The seller had due to them $450,577.67, and between their first lien mortgage payoff, all of their closing costs, and the seller credits, they netted over $200,000 to them. Do you guys have any questions in this section so far? Okay, so sometimes you'll see here, if this adjustment here, the property taxes was to be shown paid by the borrower, these prorations here would be different. So this proration, and then at that point would come down here as a credit to them and a charge to the seller. As you can see, there's already preset sections here showing these adjustments, okay? Because those are typical adjustments that you'll probably see on transactions. So just remember, section K is fees, section L is credits, okay? Here, basically, it will tell the borrower on page 4 whether the loan is assumable, right? On conventional loans, it will not allow assumption of this loan. Is there a demand feature, like a prepayment penalty or anything like that? This loan does not have any demand features, okay? What is your late payments? If your payment is more than 15 days late, your lender will charge a late fee of 5%, which is standard for conventional, of the principal and interest overdue. Okay. Escrows. Basically, this breaks down their escrow account. Escrow property cost over 1 year. Non-escrow property cost over the first year. Initial escrow payments and your monthly escrow payments. Okay, so this is their breakdown of their escrow accounts. It also will tell them if there's any negative amortization. Nobody does these anymore. Okay. Partial payments. Will partial payments be accepted? May accept, may hold them, or does not accept. I don't know very many lenders that do accept partial payments, so you will mostly see that they do not accept partial payments. Okay. Then again, they will remind the borrower the property in which the security interest of this transaction is held for, which is the property on 14,000 West Warner Avenue, Unit 45. Okay. Page 5 of the CD. The total payments. This section here, through the whole entire life of the loan, if the borrower never refinances this loan again, even though they borrowed only $427,500 because of interest, over the life of the loan, they will have made if they stay in this loan and do not refinance, $1,150,748.98 in total payments up until their very last payment. Okay. Amount financed from this was 414,000. Finance charges, basically, that's the interest that was earned on all of this from these payments, was 721,000. Okay. Your APR on this loan was 8.655. Some people might ask, why is it that high when my interest rate was 7.75? Well, a lot of these fees are considered in the industry APR fees. So those get added in, and some of that, it does include title and escrow fees. It also includes the discount points, your origination fees, our lender fees, right? So a lot of these fees are increasing the APR. The primary reason on why the APR is being increased, the major factor is the mortgage insurance. Mortgage insurance will jack up your APR dramatically. So if you compare this to a 80% LTV conventional loan, APR will be a lot closer to the starting interest rate, okay? The tip table is basically the total amount of interest that you'll pay over the loan term as a percentage of your loan amount. So all the interest that you're paying is almost 158% of the amount that you borrow. It asks liability after foreclosure. So here in the state of California, the state may protect you. You know that it's not most likely going to happen, but they may protect you. Okay. Some states do not have a foreclosure protection. So in the state of California on this one, it does show that the state may protect you. Okay. This right here will also give the borrower all the information of everybody that is a part of the transaction. I do see a problem here. I know there's some real estate agents in here right now, so I'm just going to say, guys, please make sure your purchase contract is complete as much as possible. The borrower here can use this as a primary source of contact because, as you can see here, the borrower's real estate agent does not have a contact phone number here. So we will refer to the purchase contract, which means that this probably did not have the buyer's agent's phone number shown on the purchase contract. But as you can see, it will give you, the borrower, the information of everybody that is part of this transaction. The lender and the number to call, the real estate broker for the buyer. Unfortunately, they won't have a number here, but it's the buyer's agent. I'm pretty sure they know how to get in contact with them. The seller's agent, the agency in which they've worked for, the address of the agency, their BRE number, their email address, their phone number, and then escrow's contact information. Okay, so the CD is meant to be kind of like a one-stop shop for information to the borrower on the transaction. Okay, then here, as I mentioned previously, it looked like there was debts that they were paying off at closing. And as you can see here, it does show that there is a Victoria's Secrets, a Best Buy, and an Old Navy account that is to be paid. And this page is breaking it down, telling them, hey, these are the accounts that need to be paid. So the problem that we've been encountering recently is some escrows don't look at this section and they don't realize it until after the transactions close, and we have to bug them and say, hey, you guys were instructed to make sure that this was paid, and please refer to the CD, and they'll go back and they'll see, yes, this was supposed to be paid. Okay, and then these are just the signature lines. So this is a purchase transaction. Does anybody have any questions on this so far before I jump over to a refinance transaction and show you guys how that differs? All right, guys. So now I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to the refinance. The refinance CD is a lot easier to read. Why? There's no seller section on it, right? It's pretty much the same thing. Tells them the loan terms, the purpose of the transaction. So as you can see, this shows refinance, right? It's a fixed rate, not an ARM. This is a conventional, not FHA or VA. The loan number, right? Escrow's information, loan amount, interest rate. So none of that's changed. As you can see, it's still all the same boxes. Oh, but hey, compared to the previous transaction, there's no other. So basically, this is matching the estimated escrows. You see that? So this property did not have HOAs. So there is no other to be marked. Okay, as you can see, it is not marked here, and it's not stating that it's not escrow. Okay, so this happens to be a transaction that the borrower is taking cash out on. So in this transaction, the borrower is getting over $20,000 cash back. But on page 2, as you can see, hey, there is no seller paid column, right? So it's much easier to read. Nothing's really changed. Origination, services the borrowers did not shop for, services borrowers did shop for, which is title and escrow. Here's the recording charges. This has not been closed yet. So these numbers here are all estimates. As you can see, the deed of trust shows $225,000 or $225, and the mortgage shows $150 for a total of $375. Okay. Per diem interest is being collected from this Friday. So totaling $1,316.14. 6 months of property taxes being paid through closing, $4,165.91. The impounds are set up for next year. And as you can see, the hazard insurance is not up for renewal yet. So you'll see that it's being impounded for 11 months. And this is based off of their first payment. So if the loan's closing now, their first payment's not until January, which then there's always a 2-month cushion, right? So back out 2 months from here, 9 from January, 3 more months to make it full. Their first pay, the homeowner's insurance is going to be due in April. Okay. Some people might ask, why is there a 2-month cushion? Well, we all know homeowners insurance don't stay the same and property taxes don't stay the same. So the reason why we do additional impounds, the cushion, is to help cover and make sure that their impound account has sufficient funds for any future increases. Okay, so does that always work? No. Sometimes your property taxes might jump significantly because property values have increased, or as you guys know, in the state of California, property taxes have, a homeowner's insurance have become a little harder to get, right? So insurance premiums are jumping up dramatically. So this will hopefully help deal with those increases. But sometimes your borrower might get a letter saying, hey, your impound account's a little low. Please send in additional funds. We've already made disbursements, okay? So as you can see, this was a cash out refinance to help them clear off debt. So all of the accounts that are being paid off here, including their mortgage. This looks like it's a second, a Bank of America card, Capital One card, 2 Citi cards. So it looks like they're starting off with a clean slate. I am very happy for them. And they're still pocketing some cash, okay? Basically, these informations are all still the same. Will not allow for some assumption. This does not have a demand feature. This is the breakdown of their escrows, okay? Does not have a negative amortization feature. So it is a little bit easier to read, right? And as you can see on page 5, it does not list a buyer's agent or a seller's agent. Why? Because it's not a purchase transaction. They're not going to be a part of this transaction. So it's only going to show lender and a broker. So if you have any brokered loans, basically your information would be here as a loan officer, and the lender, whoever is lending out the money, would show here, okay? It shows escrow's information and then borrower signatures. So far, any questions on reading a CD? Because I want to make sure you guys are armed and able to help your clients understand what they're signing and help them understand what's being charged in transaction and what they can possibly do.
But what were the origination fees for this loan?
Say that again?
Yeah, what were the origination fees for the loan?
On this one?
Yes.
On the refinance, let's take a look. So we're going to scroll up. There was no discount on this. Loan origination was $7,963. So it sounds like it might be 2% of the loan amount. Right? So 2% plus our admin and underwriting fee, the total origination was $10,243.
10,000. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
When your borrower sees the amortization schedule, it's going to be on your loan docs and they're going to sign it. So how that breaks down is it's telling them, hey, what payment it is, what month it is, the amount of the payment, how much goes towards principal, how much goes towards interest, your ending balance, which is basically your remaining principal balance, how much in PMI, and what your LTV is. Let me zoom in so this is a little bit easier to read. Oops, I might have gone too far. Okay, right? Payment, payment date, payment amount, portion of principal, interest, ending balance, how much was paid in mortgage insurance, and what your current LTV is. Okay, so we're just going to pay attention to this PMI table. As you can see, it's still going through several pages. And at 120, it does go to the lower MI amount. If you guys, I'm pretty sure I've all seen it. It changes typically after 120 months, but it drops to a lower amount. Sometimes it does stay the same if your LTV is pretty low and your initial MI is low, okay? So on payment 121, their mortgage insurance does drop down to 71.25, but their LTV is still 82.758%. So continuing on this, on payment 151, that shows as their last payment. On payment 152, as you can see here, it already drops off. Because at payment 150, they're still above 78%, just slightly. So at payment 151, we'll put them below 78%. So the payment drops off after that. Okay. Well, I thank everybody for your time today. Thank you for attending this training, and hopefully it has helped. I wish you happy holidays if I don't do any other training before then. And thank you very much, everybody, for everything you do. Have a good day.
Thank you, lady.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.